This video is brought to you by America First Insight. Help support the growing conservative movement by becoming a member today. And if you want to support this channel, you can also use the code REAL when becoming a member. Thank you and enjoy the video. As everyone knows, the 2026 midterm elections are happening later this year in November. And I think it's fair to say that as of now, Democrats are the favorites to take back the House in November. I don't think it's really insane to say that. I think most people would agree. Yeah, right now, it may not be a 100% guarantee they do take back the House, but right now, yes, they are the clear favorites to retake the House majority in November. But at the same time, for whatever reason, everyone is just assuming, or not everybody, but a growing segment of people are just assuming that with it being a Democrat majority in the House, and they're going to gain like what, 10 or 20 seats or whatever, that somehow means that automatically we're going to see a blue tsunami in the Senate. Now, let's be clear. Is it possible for Democrats to retake the Senate majority in November? Yes, it is entirely possible. But we've gone over this a million times. This is like a best case scenario. The stars align. Everything goes perfectly. Yes, Democrats could, in that scenario, take back the Senate. But look at the map right now. We've gone over this a million times. Republicans right now start with 46 seats that are safe. They're not going to flip. Democrats start with 44. And a lot of these other states, I would argue, are safe Republican. But okay, for Democrats to take back the Senate, they got to win Maine. They have to win New Hampshire, win Michigan, win Ohio, win North Carolina, win Georgia, just to get to 50. That is not enough for majority. Now, you could argue Murkowski's going to flip Democrat. Maybe she does. But if she doesn't, well, in that scenario, you got to win, like, I don't know, Alaska. And yes, in that scenario, Democrats would get 51 in the Senate. But guys, this is like best case scenario. I don't get why people are just assuming that, yeah, Ohio's going to flip automatically. Alaska's an automatic flip. And Democrats are just going to win Michigan and New Hampshire by 25 points. It's all over. Could that happen? Sure. But guys, even before you look at the current state of the races in many of these states, this seems like a stretch to say, yeah, Democrats are going to sweep everything in the Senate. If this was a map that had like a Republican in, say, like Connecticut and New Jersey, fine. It would be a much easier pathway for Democrats to win. But with the current map right now, it is it's a big stretch to really just assume that even though Democrats, they may retake the House this year, they're probably going to, that doesn't automatically mean that Republicans will lose the Senate. That is not a guaranteed outcome. So yeah, that's the first issue, and I don't get why people are just assuming. Just this map alone makes it very difficult for Democrats to even get to 50-50, let alone to 51. But okay, whatever. Like, you look at the map right now, it's already pretty difficult. And we're kind of being generous here. We're not including Iowa as safe. Nebraska, listen, Dan Osborne is a strong candidate, but he ran in 24. He still lost. Could he do slightly better this year? Maybe. But either way, already we are stretching things to an extreme amount just by looking at the map right now. But you factor in the current state of all these races, and it becomes even more apparent that while it is still possible for Democrats to retake the Senate, it is still possible. I'm not denying that. I think it is very unrealistic, even as of now. And I would still argue, even with everything going on, there is a serious chance that Republicans could maybe actually expand their Senate majority. I know that sounds crazy. That is not an official prediction. But guys, when you look at each race individually, you realize, oh, wait a minute. Republicans actually possibly have a pathway here. Again, not an official prediction. No one should assume that this is going to happen. But still, you look at each race individually, it becomes very difficult for Democrats to take back the Senate, let alone get to 50-50. And it actually becomes more possible that Republicans could actually expand their majority in the Senate. So let's start with the ones that I don't get why people are talking about so much. Iowa is not flipping. How many times do we have to go over this? Iowa is a Republican state. Could it get closer? Sure. But the Democrat primary there alone is a disaster. It's a shit show. Nobody wants to win. And it's just too Republican of a state. So Iowa, I think right now it's Republican. I don't get why people still think it's going to flip this time. It's just too Republican. And another thing that nobody's talking about, and that's for a lot of these primaries, is how competitive these Democrat primaries are. In Iowa, it's a shit show. I think a couple of people did drop out, but it still is a mess. And that's not good, especially in a very Republican state. For Republicans that are Democrats to have any chance of winning like Iowa, they needed a 100% united primary. Nobody else ran. They've united behind one very strong candidate and maybe gets closer in that scenario. Right now, though, I don't even see, like, it's going to be safe Republican. I don't see how it's even within like 5 points. So I don't get this logic of it's going to flip. It's going to magically flip. So yeah, Iowa, it's saying Republican. Nebraska, I know Dan Osborne's a very strong candidate. He's running as an independent. I get that. But guys, these type of candidates, most of the time, sometimes they buck trends, but most of the time, when they run for the same seat again, they tend to do worse. No matter the environment, they tend to just fall off significantly. Could he get closer? Maybe. And if this was Iowa, I think he would actually win. But the difference is with Iowa, it used to be a Democrat state like 10 years ago. There are a lot of Trump voters that's still sometimes willing to vote Democrat. You don't really got that in Nebraska. I know he did pretty good in 2024, but 2024, if he was going to win, he was going to win it that year. Even in a blue wave environment, I don't think he's going to win in 2026. Could he get closer? Sure. But right now, I don't really see it flipping. Alaska. Listen, I know Patola's a strong candidate. I get that. I think it could be closer. But guys, like even with Nebraska a little bit, these type of candidates that lose the prior election and they run for the same seat or the equivalent of the same seat the very next cycle, they tend to drop off significantly in support. Patola lost as the incumbent. And now she's going against Dan Sullivan, who I'm not saying is a strong candidate, but with incumbency, it gives him a big advantage. And Alaska, I know it's a very weird state, and it might get very close, but right now, I don't see how anyone could say, yeah, Alaska's going to magically flip automatically because of Patola. Could it flip? Sure. It is actually possible it does because Alaska is a very weird state. But right now, I don't think it's going to happen. So that alone makes it where Democrats have to win 7 of these states, all 7 of them, just to get to 51. If they lose any of these states, they're stuck at 50-50 in a best case scenario. Do you see the problem here? And we can keep going. Texas, I know everyone's talking about it. It's going to flip if Paxton's a nominee. Guys, Texas is still a very Republican state. Will Paxton underperform big time? I think he will. But Telrico is not a strong candidate. He clearly has some major issues. And Texas polling, just like a state like Ohio, tends to be very shit early on. It tends to overstate Democrat support significantly. And yeah, Telrico has a small lead, but he's like at 45% or 46%. For whatever reason, later in the cycle, unless something crazy occurs, Republicans tend to have a magical surge in Texas and Ohio and some of these other states. So while I think it will probably get closer than it should be, even with Paxton, I think Republicans win Texas. I just think it's just too Republican right now for it to flip. Until Rico, he just isn't as strong as some people thought he was. He has way too many controversies, said a lot of dumb stuff that I don't think really appeals in Texas. And a reminder, he had a very competitive primary. I know they're kind of getting behind him right now, but honestly, these voters that voted for Crockett, it was predominantly black voters. Will they vote for Tellerico? Maybe. But without Crockett running, there's a good chance a lot of these voters, they're just not going to vote. They're just not enthusiastic enough to vote. And that could be the difference between Tellerico having a serious chance of winning to just getting crushed. So I think right now, Texas, it could, in best case scenario, Paxton could possibly lose. But right now, again, I'm just not seeing it. I don't get where people are coming from where they're saying it's all going to flip. Am I crazy for saying that even right now, with historical trends, Texas might get close, but it's still going to stay Republican? You need a historical blue wave, and that's the issue. You need a historical blue wave bigger than even 2018 was to flip Texas or flip Alaska. And right now, the polls are not even showing that. Some are showing like D plus 15, but the average generic ballot poll is like D plus 4, D plus 5, D plus 3. Good for Democrats, but not enough. So, okay, Republicans are really at 50 in the Senate. You could argue maybe Texas or Alaska could flip. Okay, Republicans right now, they win both these states, okay? They're at 50. So Democrats, even if they win every other state, they still lose. They still get to 50. They get to 50-50. That's not enough. You need Murkowski to flip, and she might. But seriously, that is the only way in that scenario they could get the Senate. Let's keep going. Ohio. Guys, we've gone over this a million times. Sherrod Brown in 2024 lost as the incumbent against Bernie Moreno, who was essentially a no-name just a year prior. Nobody knows who the hell he was, and he still beat a longtime incumbent. Ohio is very Republican now. He's now going against John Husted, who, by the way, ran for several statewide races before, won by big margins. He's well known there. He was a former Secretary of State, former Lieutenant Governor, and he's already getting groups that back Sherrod Brown in 2024 to endorse him. So it's like, if Sherrod Brown could have won as the incumbent, now he's going against an incumbent who has electoral strength, who has no real issues, and is getting groups that backed Brown just a year ago. How is Brown going to win? Could it get close? Yeah. But Sherrod Brown couldn't beat Bernie Moreno. If he couldn't beat Moreno, how the hell is he going to win now? I think it could get close. Fine. But realistically, and again with Ohio polling, even then it's actually looking kind of bad for Brown. With Ohio polling, just like Texas early on, Democrats run it up. They run it up in every single poll. They win by 25 points. But come October, it comes back to reality. And right now, Brown's like barely leading in some polls, and that's it. So yeah, Ohio, again, could have flipped, sure. But guys, right there, 51. That's without really stretching anything. That's without saying anything ludicrous. And you're already at 51 in the Senate. Do you see the problem? And we're not even making some insane assumptions. We're just saying, hey, in Ohio, Sherrod Brown is barely ahead, if he's even ahead right now. There's plenty of polls showing, no, he's actually losing. And in Ohio, polls early on favor Democrats, usually. Happened to advance 2022. People forget about this. Tim Ryan's going to win by 15 points. How did that go? So that's the issue here. These individual races, they don't really add up to a historical blue wave. Now we can keep going. Like, okay, Georgia is probably going to stay Democrat. I like Mike Collins, but I think the Republican primary there is still way too competitive. It's a shit show. You got 3 major candidates there. It's a mess. And Jon Ossoff is an extremely overrated candidate, but I think with him being the incumbent, it is a Democrat-leaning year. It is Georgia. It's getting more Democrat. Yeah, I think right now, Jon Ossoff does probably win.
But outside of that, I mean, North Carolina would probably be next. Yeah, I said that. North Carolina, I do think actually goes Democrat before Michigan. And really, that's for two reasons. One, look at the North Carolina polling right now, and it is bad. Now, some of these polls are just complete horseshit. Like TIPP, Cooper plus 24. That is insane. Cooper plus 10 from Change Research, a Democrat group. But at the same time, you do got Emerson. They found Cooper plus 6. Carolina Journal, they found a Cooper plus 8. I think they released a new one. PPP, a Democrat pollster, by the way, only has a Cooper plus 3. And we'll add a little bit of more context in a little bit about this race. But either way, fine. Let's say North Carolina does go Democrat. I think it will. I think it's right now, one of the easiest flips for Democrats in the Senate. Well, these three other races, can you really assume that Republicans are going to lose all three of them? I really don't think you could just say, yeah, because New Hampshire and Maine are Democrat-leaning states, they're going to automatically flip or go Democrat. Yeah, I'm talking about New Hampshire now because a little while ago, Emerson College released a poll that found John Sununu in a tied race with Chris Pappas. He's down by 1 point, but margin of error, statistical noise, that's a tie. Yeah, he is tied with what everyone thought was the strongest candidate Democrats could run, and he is. He is tied with him with 11% of voters currently undecided in New Hampshire. Yeah, this is not an automatic flip. And you look at these other polls between John Sununu and Chris Pappas, Sununu has been slowly gaining. Look at this. A couple months ago, it was Pappas plus 5, plus 3, and now it's plus 1. You can argue it's kind of the same margin, but Pappas is not up by 25 points like some people were saying. Even early on, he was up by at most 6 points. It's clear that Pappas, he's a strong candidate. He has not cracked 50. His best was being right at 50, not at 51 or 52. He is stuck at 50% at his peak. And now, most of the polls have him between 44 to 46%. 2 polls have him above that. Sununu, though, he's slowly but steadily gaining. So you can't, I think Democrats are slightly favored here, but it's not a foregone conclusion Democrats win New Hampshire. Maine, there was a poll that came out from Emerson earlier today, and Susan Collins is losing against Plattner and Mills. Okay, you can argue that's proof that she's going to lose. But guys, here's a quick reality check about Maine polling. Maine polling sucks. Back in 2020, I'm not saying we're at the same exact miss occur, but back in 2020, Emerson College, again, they're a good pollster. I'm not saying they're bad or whatever. Their final, not a poll from 5 months prior, their final poll, like a day before Election Day in Maine, was Gideon plus 6. College won by almost 9 points. That is a huge miss. And every poll's like this. You just cannot poll Maine properly. So do the math here. Collins in 2020 was at 42% in the final Emerson poll. Gideon was at 48%. Look at the newest Emerson poll. Susan Collins 41 or Susan Collins plus or 43. Yeah. Essentially where she was back in 2020. Does this mean she's going to for sure win? No. Again, Maine is a fairly Democrat state. It's a very weird state politically. And Collins, I do think, will have her worst showing this year. But right now, with Maine polling, you got to be very careful with it. Because even these big leads for Mills or whatever can be just an utter disaster or failure of a miss. We're talking about a 15, 20-point miss potentially happening. That's how bad Maine polling can get. So you can't really say that's an automatic win for Dems. And finally, Michigan. I would argue this is a sleeper flip of 2026. Yes, I said it. Do I think it's a foregone conclusion? No. But guys, look at the Democrat primary here. You have 3 major candidates running. They all hate each other. And there's no clear frontrunner of any of them. They're all major candidates getting significant backing, and it is a shit show. They are bashing each other repeatedly. It is very bad what's going on the Democrat side. Republicans, meanwhile, they don't have that. They don't have a shit show of a primary. They have Mike Rogers running, and that's it. Mike Rogers is already campaigning for the general, and he barely lost in 2024 against Slotkin, who would argue was a stronger candidate than any of these three. So do the math there. If he barely lost in 2024, and I know we're talking about more Democrat year, you can't really compare a presidential year to a midterm. I get that. But Mike Rogers, I do think has a serious chance. I know retread candidates, they tend to underperform, like I said, but this is such a unique situation where, hey, the Republican side's a shit show, or the Democrat side is. It's a shit show. Nobody wants to win. And even the polling right now, not just the Democrat side's a mess, but for the general, look at this. Yeah, you have Stevens winning against Rogers, barely, but not by 20 points, by 2, with a couple of Democrat pollsters boosting her average. That's the issue for Democrats. They're not in a situation where you could say, yeah, it's going to flip. It's going to flip Democrat because reasons. I think right now, Michigan, of all these states, is actually the sleeper flip of the night. That could change come November because the primary, it might end earlier. Everybody may drop out. But right now, that's not happening. Everybody's at like 20% of the vote, all getting major backing from key Democrats. So, yeah, you do the math and you realize, yeah, Democrats, they have a chance the Senate, sure, in a best case scenario. It is not as likely as you think. And if you really look at these races individually, you can argue all three of them could actually go Republican. And you could expand the Senate majority. And even North Carolina, I said I would bring this up later. I said this earlier. Well, back in 2020 for the Senate race, Cunningham was beating Tillis by 3 in the final aggregate. And you go earlier, he was up by 10 points against an incumbent. Yet again, another state where polling is shit, especially early on. The polls suck here. And a lot of these same polls, they have Cooper winning, but actually, oddly enough, less than they had Cunningham winning in 2024 or 2020, excuse me. And Cooper himself is a huge underperformer in polling. Back in 2020, he was expected to win by 11. He won by only 4. He really shat the bed here. And a lot of these same polls are showing he's winning, but by a less margin than what he was back in 2020. And you look at these individual polls, and they're barely above 47%. Yes, he's very high in his polling average. He's at 47, 47, 48. You got one poll from Change Research, a Democrat-leaning poll, at 50. But it's not consistently. Every single poll is at 51, 52, 55. The only reason he's winning by a big margin is Whatley's doing so bad. He is stuck at 40%. Some of these polls are just absurd. He's not at 24%. That is ridiculous. I have no clue what they were cooking up there. But you take that out of the equation, he is not in this foregone conclusion of a victory. He's not in that situation yet. Could it change? Sure. So even North Carolina, which I would argue of the actual swing states, probably is most likely to go Democrat, outside of like Georgia, of course. Outside of that, though, Michigan looking good for the GOP. New Hampshire surprisingly good now with Sununu. Maine, who knows? Maine point is a mess. So you can understand why I'm saying it may not be likely, it may not be the best case, or it may not actually happen, but Republicans actually have a pathway here to expand their majority. Anyways, folks, thank you so much for watching. If you guys did enjoy, smash the like button down below, subscribe, share with your friends, and of course, join the channel today. Godspeed to all of you.